Welcome. So lovely to see you all. I hope you all took a moment to enjoy this beautiful day. It is a beautiful day here in New England for sure. I'm Lillian Lennox and co-hosting the conference here today with Rain Brown. And Rain is going to be resting her voice for the rest of the day. Is available for questions. So if you want to directly put a question to Rain, feel free to do so in the chat box. We'll just wait just one more minute or a couple more moments as people are still arriving. Brilliant. Okay, so I'd like to officially begin the rest of our morning here, although very early morning, I believe, for Jen Hart on the West Coast. We are so thrilled and delighted to be presenting our first Drills and Skills workshop of the day, and we are honored to welcome Jen Hart. Jen is the Senior Probation Officer, Wellness and Peer Support Coordinator at San Diego County Probation Department. And today, Jen will be presenting on creating calm in chaos. And Jen will also be offering a Q&A at the end of the session. So please feel free to send your questions via chat at any time. Send them directly to me at any time during the presentation. Warm welcome to Jen.
Hey, thank you, everyone. It's really fantastic to be here. And again, as she mentioned, my name is Jen Hart, and I've been in law enforcement now for 24 years. And resilience is certainly one of those topics that probably has come up more recently for us. And I'm really grateful to have a lot of tools in my toolbox now to really manage the things that perhaps 10, 20 years ago, I'm not sure that I really had the best control of. So I'm, again, really excited today to come after Roland McCready, and thank you so much for that fantastic presentation. Hopefully you were all able to join in this morning as he explained a lot of the background around sort of the physiology of coherence and gave us some of the important information about our hearts. And all of us, and we are all different flavors of first responders here, and I appreciate you all joining us. But everyone, regardless of what you do, we're all guided by our hearts. Certainly, as Roland and Dr. McCready had shared, that our heart is really the energetic center of our body, but we're also guided by our hearts to be here and do this work. So just wanting to take a moment to thank you all for what you do and for your willingness to be here, to show up, to want to learn more, and to practice some of the things that you're learning so that you can not only take care of yourself, but also the communities you serve. And as we think about the communities that we serve, we've had a lot of themes throughout this conference, right? About kind of this idea of having some chaos, right? If you think about the environment around the country over the past few years, perhaps your department, wherever you work, even in your own personal life, you can imagine that the words sort of chaos or confusion, challenge, maybe even depletion, those might be some things that have come up for you if you think about how our world has been. And certainly there is some chaos. There has been quite a bit for us. And we're looking at finding out, okay, we still need to perform at peak levels, regardless of whatever the circumstances are. So how can we create some calm? And that's what we're really going to talk about here today. And I'm grateful to be a HeartMath certified trainer. I've been practicing these techniques for about 5 years and teaching them to folks in my agency and other law enforcement folks. And the wonderful thing is, I know there's some questions that came up for Dr. McCready is how do I practice these on the fly? And what we're going to talk about here in this workshop is how we can not only just have the awareness, which is the first piece of this, but how we can practice in our day-to-day lives so that we can create some calm. And I'm sure we can all use to create more calm in our lives for sure. I know I can. And if we think about this new normal of what we've created, right, over the past few years, it feels like sometimes that chaos, this disorder, the challenge has become the new normal for us. And I don't know about you, but I kind of feel like some of these creatures here and there. And right now I'm attending a peer support conference. And as I was introduced as your wellness and peer support coordinator for probation, I deal with a lot of challenges on a day-to-day basis. That's kind of my job, is to help show up for people. But in that work that we all do in showing up for people, I'm kind of being delivered a lot of chaos. And just recently, we had one of our juvenile institutions at probation, one of our units was taken over by the youth. So imagine that, really, you have these youth who are in custody, they take over a classroom, they've barricaded it, try to take a teacher hostage and bring out the negotiations team. So think about the feelings that come up in that, the frustration, the anxiety, the fear. Certainly that I looked like all of these critters here over this past week trying to show up to support these folks. But what I know is that we recognize that these challenges are going to continue to occur in our lives, right? What may have once been peaks and valleys of chaos and calm really kind of has been revved up over the past few years. And the good thing is, as Bruce has talked about, is that there is hope. There is hope because we do have a physiology that allows us to create a state of coherence and to bring some calm into our lives. And I look forward to sharing a few of those tools here with you this morning. So take a look at this, this slide here. And I'm not sure of how many of you can relate to this, but maybe you woke up this morning and you felt, wow, I got a really great night of sleep and it's been a rough couple of days. I'm feeling really restored. You jump out of bed and you're feeling like doing cartwheels and I'm going to go in with a positive outlook today. And 5 minutes later, woof, you feel yourself as you walk into the workforce, you feel drained. You automatically are in a situation that is challenging. And maybe if it's not 5 minutes, maybe by the end of your shift, you're dealing with so much that you're feeling, wow, I came into this with a full heart, ready to take on the day, and I'm feeling a little worn by the end. The good thing is, if we practice the techniques that you've learned throughout this conference and what you're going to learn here this morning, is we can really find ways to manage our energy. So what Dr. McCready has been talking about is with intelligent energy management, that we can try to ward off that feeling of depletion 5 minutes or 12 hours into our shift, to really take care of ourselves and do that on the fly. So think about those things that create, somebody who's vibrant and positive, yourself going into the workplace. Think about some of those things that change your day, right? That change your energy. And again, every day is different, right? We don't wake up feeling exactly the same way. We don't have a day where our energy is the same moment to moment. But regardless of how our energy is, it's important to understand, as Dr. McCready shared, that we are in charge. We get to have some control over managing our energy. And as he did mention in his presentation that our emotions are primary drivers of our physiology. Our emotions can either be renewing or depleting. So think about your inner battery. Again, you're feeling charged up, ready to go throughout your day, but how long before that battery drains? And if we do some things to be proactive, and Dr. McCready shared a few of those, and we can really take care of ourselves before we get into situations to manage our energy, but also to ensure that as things come up that we didn't expect, that we can remain restored. And if we think about renewing and depleting emotions, again, this is not bad or good emotions. They're just, how does the emotion affect our body? So let's talk about depleting emotions. This person who is, drained over here on your slide, slumped over the desk. This person is feeling some depleted emotions. So the emotions that we often feel in our lives that make us depleted, you can imagine, you can relate to these things. The feelings of frustration, of anger, fear, And I think even more importantly are some of the emotions that Dr. McCready shared earlier that are almost even more dangerous is the cynicism. When we're so burnt out and we're just over it, we don't have any faith left in the system or our chain of command, and we feel like we're apathetic. Those emotions are all depleting for our system. And it doesn't mean that we're not going to feel these emotions in our day-to-day life. But we just get to recognize that depleting emotions are going to drain our batteries. And one way for us to really change the game here, to flip the script, is to remember that there are also renewing emotions. So if you take a look at the energized individual sitting at the desk with a full battery, there are various renewing emotions that we experience in our day-to-day that really help to support us in getting into that state of coherence. And Roland shared a few of those emotions with us, but even just a simple, like he said, appreciating the day of how beautiful it is. I'm here in sunny San Diego and we pay a hefty price to be here. And when I wake up in the morning, I practice gratitude and heart-focused breathing to help get myself started out on the right foot for the day. And there are a lot of other renewing emotions that Roland shared in his presentation this morning, such as courage and dignity and enthusiasm and passion, or maybe just a sense of appreciation and ease. And when we think about these emotions, we can kind of take a moment to just check in and think, how are you feeling? So I'd ask you that question. And I know some of us have joined back in. Hopefully all of you have attended again Roland's presentation this morning, but maybe take a moment just to check in and think about how you are feeling this morning. Maybe you're feeling rushed and getting back, a time crunch, or you're grateful to be here. You were excited to be able to listen to Roland speak and to learn some tools this morning. However you're feeling is going to have an impact on your body, as Dr. McCready mentioned. And the important thing to highlight here is that not only are emotions our primary drivers of our physiology, but they set a course of action in motion. So as Dr. McCready shared, like our heart energy changes based upon the emotions that we're feeling. It affects not only us, but the people we work with. So, and one way to demonstrate depleting and renewing emotions that would help you understand this perhaps a little bit better is to look at our depleting and renewing emotions on a grid. And this handout was provided for you. It's available if you wanted to take a look at it later. But let me just take a quick moment to explain what this is. So once again, we have emotions that are depleting that really deplete our battery, deplete our energy, and those that are renewing. And as Dr. McCready reminded us that, with our autonomic nervous system, the things that are controlled in the background, that we have things that really jack up our heart rate, our sympathetic nervous system, or the gas pedal, that bring us a high heart rate. And that is the sympathetic nervous system. And then we also have the other half of our nervous system, the parasympathetic, that helps to slow things down and lowers our heart rate, the sort of that brake pedal there for relaxation. And that is your vertical line here. And what you see, this horizontal line is our hormonal response. And in our response, we also want to be reminded here that depleting emotions when we're feeling and experiencing these emotions, a whole cocktail of hormones and physiological responses is set afoot, including the biggest thing here, which is cortisol. And cortisol is important for day-to-day function, but too much of it can be very dangerous for us. So depleting emotions really affect our cortisol levels. And on the opposite side, we have our renewing emotions, which help provide us with a lot of DHEA, that vitality hormone that really helps to renew us. So this horizontal line really represents the hormone response. So let's take a look. When you are feeling depleted, so you imagine, we can all, especially you all on the East Coast, so I've visited myself and haven't lived there, but I know certainly living in Southern California, there's a lot of traffic. So we can all relate to traffic. So regardless of what your job is, imagine you're stuck in traffic and you're feeling really frustrated, right? Because you're late to whatever you're trying to get to. Perhaps people are cutting you off, and that has you feeling frustrated, maybe angry. Think about what if you get really infuriated, those are emotions that are really going to jack up your heart rate and also deplete your energy. It's a normal response, right? This is a normal response for us, but just really recognizing that that's going to put you in a place of depleted emotions. So think about other emotions that might be also depleting, that might also increase your heart rate. And just an example would be, again, anxiety. And if I could see all of your faces, I would look you in the eye and ask you, like, do we all experience anxiety in our day-to-day lives? And the answer I'm sure would be yes. If I was to ask you who experiences all of these emotions, anxiety, fear, frustration, that's going to be all of us. So these are normal human reactions, and just really being aware that they are depleting our system. And if you think about depleting emotions that maybe have a lower heart rate associated, those are emotions that maybe a little bit under the surface. They're not as loud, but perhaps more dangerous. Those emotions such as cynicism, withdrawal, resentment, and impatience, right? I like to think about with this impatience, we feel like we're in such a fast-paced world, right? All the time, wanting to do, go. We find ourselves in the grocery store, just getting a rotisserie chicken and feeling, this urgency to hurry up and get through the grocery line as if there's an emergency to get a chicken, right? So recognizing that these emotions are normal, and yet we get to figure out how to bring ourselves into a space that is renewing. The positive side here is that we do have renewing emotions that recharge our battery, and examples that increase our heart rate are passion, courage, excitement, that feeling of adventure you get. When you think about why you decided to do this job and why you stay in it, the impact that you have, that is a renewing emotion. That really increases your heart rate. And then you have renewing emotions that really help to maybe relax you a little bit more. Those feelings of contentment, appreciation. When Bruce was talking about this morning, to really connect with your spiritual side and really feeling that sense of calm and ease and connectedness. And if we take a look here, these are some of the examples of the emotions that come along here in our depletion to renewal grid. So one of the things that you really get to be aware of, and the first tool to take away with you, is just to understand that these depleting emotions are draining your battery. So take a look at this list right here and really ask yourself, which of these emotions are the most challenging for you, right? Where are you losing your energy on the day-to-day? Are you quick to get frustrated and be upset? Do you kind of find yourself being impatient or resenting your agency, decisions that are being made? Maybe you find that you're pretty good at that, and you found you can actually appreciate yourself for being able to come back to a place of recognizing how much dignity there is in the job that you do, how much courage it takes for you to show up every day. Or maybe you have a practice that helps you to become calm. And again, the important thing here is recognizing the sources of your energy drain, knowing that all of these emotions that you're experiencing are normal. They're not bad or wrong. They're human reactions to very difficult work that we do. But we get to find ways to bring ourselves back over to the renewing side to really ensure that our energy is maintained. And I'd really like us to practice together. So this is going to be our opportunity to practice this technique together. So Dr. McCready shared with you what heart-focused breathing is. And we're going to take it one step further and step into quick coherence. So I will remind you as we get into this practice, go ahead and remind you what it is, what heart focused breathing is. It is really just an opportunity to have a calm breath where you're focusing your attention in the area of your heart. I'll walk you through that again here in just a moment. And on top of that, we're going to add in trying to re-experience a renewing emotion. So take a look at the list here on the right-hand side and think about those renewing emotions, something that may speak to you. When we think about renewing emotions, you can also consider what it feels like. Again, what it feels like to be in your favorite place. Maybe think of someone you love or something that you appreciate. And hopefully that will help really connect you with the experience of those renewing emotions. So I'll go ahead and walk you through this. So as we kind of prepare ourselves to do this first practice together, what I'll do is, just like a lot of probably the other instructors have done, is just really ask you to get into a position where you're comfortable and seated, where you have an erect spine, kind of an elegant posture where you're not slouching. You're just intentionally comfortable, but alert, right? And then you can put your hands on your lap or put your hand on your heart if you believe that will help you to focus your energy on your heart. We'll breathe in and out of our nose. And with this technique, just for right now, I invite you to perhaps close your eyes or look down at the floor if you're in a position to do so. And these are techniques that once you practice them, we encourage you to try to practice with your eyes open. But because this is the first time we're going through this, it'll help to bring you into a space of calm. We'll go ahead and get started practicing together. Focus your attention in the area of your heart. Imagine your breath is flowing in and out of your heart or chest area. Breathing a little slower and deeper than usual. Just find an easy rhythm that's comfortable. Make a sincere attempt to experience a regenerative feeling, such as appreciation or care for someone or something in your life. Just try to experience the feeling that you have for a loved one, a pet. Maybe think about a special place, an accomplishment that you're proud of, or just invite in a general sense of calm and ease. And wherever you are, I invite you to just finish up your last cycle of breath and come back. And perhaps think about how you were feeling before you practiced the quick coherence technique and how you're feeling now. What I'd like to share is that this technique is made to be intentionally incredibly simple. Quick coherence is a way for you to step into a coherent state on the fly. And it is 2 simple steps. The first is heart-focused breathing. The good thing about your breath is you have it with you all the time. It's not like these other tools you have to wonder, oh gosh, did I leave it in my pocket? It's in my briefcase. I left it at the office. It's a tool you have with you all the time. So if you can take a moment, as what Dr. McCready said, those quick moments of really choice points to really think about how to bring some resilience into your life, is really just take a moment to pause and intentionally breathe through your heart. That first step, again, being heart-focused breathing. Your second step is to just attempt to re-experience regenerative feeling. And a lot of us here in first responder communities think of feelings as an F word. This is something that is very common in our communities. It's really challenging to talk about this. I know one of the questions that came up for Dr. McCready is, well, how do I do this with my group? Or how do I do this on the fly? And the reality is that we can do this on the fly. I invited you this morning to practice while you were having your eyes closed. But once you practice this more regularly, we actually invite you to practice with your eyes open, to really connect with those feelings that are meaningful for you, those renewing feelings, which could vary from day to day. So if you're able to really connect with different feelings, like maybe you are having a difficult time with a loved one and you just got into an argument this morning, perhaps it might be a little bit more difficult for you to connect with the feeling that you have with a loved one. But you can think about, if you're able to reframe, why it's important for you to work on your relationship, or something as simple as, boy, I really love my dog. My dog, oh gosh, we just lost our dog a few months ago, but I still think about how much she brought me joy. So I use this picture here, right? Because dogs can be, our pets can be something that we can think about and automatically bring a smile to our face, right? A lot of sense of gratitude. Maybe it's our children. But if you have different things that you can come back to, things that those feelings that bring you a sense of contentment, a sense of ease, then you can invite coherence into your world with just some simple practice. And we're really talking here about taking back control. And if I think about the various folks who are here turning in through all the various different disciplines, whether you consider yourself a first responder or you're in healthcare or other type of public service, the reality is many of us like to be in a position where we can be in control. And of a lot of our organizations, there isn't space for that, right? We feel like, gosh, everything is out of control. The situation that I shared with you about one of our units in our juvenile facility being taken over by the youth, where we had no control. The quick coherence technique, the ability to reconnect with our renewing emotions and bring our self in sync, gives us that control. And certainly we have to use different ways of controlling a situation, no matter what that is. But when it comes to our physiology, we're going to be more likely to make those wise decisions, those clear decisions, when we're in a state that is coherent. And I can tell you from my week has been a bit challenged, again, with the difficulties that we've had within our institutions, officers, and responding to officer-involved shootings, people having challenges in the workplace, feeling really just depleted and burnt out. And the way for us to be able to restore is really getting ourselves back into coherence. And this is an example of a San Diego Police Department officer who has been able to use these techniques on the day-to-day. And Dr. McCready shared early on that there have been a number of studies that HeartMath has participated in, a number of law enforcement agencies specifically who have participated. And San Diego Police Department actually had taught the HeartMath techniques to their officers. They practiced quick coherence, they tracked their progress, and they were able to sort of integrate using it on a day-to-day. One officer shared about his experience by saying this: last week, I was in a situation in which a person squared off on me and started reaching into his jacket. I went to my heart-focused breathing and activated coherence, and I never felt anything but calm. As I noticed the sirens of my backup arriving, I realized my heart was beating slowly. And every other time that happened, I basically screamed for backup, and it took me a whole day to calm down. When my captain got there, he said he thought I was kidding when I put out the call because I sounded so calm on the radio. He asked what I'd be doing differently. This stuff is for real. Now, for those of you who work with first responders, folks who use the radio or are first responders yourself in that capacity, you can probably relate to this, right? I know I've been that person when I've not had the best day, even as someone who's been a dispatcher, who's been a cop, that sometimes if I'm not in the right place, I'm screeching into the radio, right? And I see Sharon, I see you nodding your head. You're like, yep, been there, you know that person. But when you're able to practice this stuff on a regular basis, not only can you bring yourself some coherence in the moment, but it has that cumulative effect that Dr. McCready was talking about. Not only if you say Sharon and I work together and we both are able to get ourselves to shift into that space, imagine how that would be for our partner who's coming up to work with us and beside us, right? We are creating a space of coherence, a space of calm, when maybe the rest of it is not calm around us. Again, the sounds of sirens, you're wondering if somebody's pulling a weapon out, that's a high risk situation. Your adrenaline is pumping. So how in that situation can you invite some calm? And this doesn't mean, and I just want to make a note of it, this doesn't mean you're relaxed, like, hey, I'm chilling, I'm kicking my feet up right now, that I just, I'm sitting on the beach drinking a Mai Tai, right? This is, the reality is that we're in some challenging situations where we can't just do some of the things we normally would do to sort of cope or bring calm into our lives. In the middle of this type of situation, the officer can't say, oh, excuse me, bad guy, could you please pause real quick? Because I needed to paint a picture. I need to do some yoga. If we could just hold on, let me just put my hand on right? So, but what you can do without anyone knowing is activate your heart-focused breathing and re-experience a renewing emotion, even in the moment of a few breaths, or while you're on your way to this call, or perhaps right away in recovering, right? So those things that we do normally to renew ourselves, we hopefully have a whole list of these things and you're practicing them daily. But the reality is we don't always in the moment have the ability to go and swim in the ocean, right? Or ride a bicycle or read a book. So this is something that we can use on the fly. And when you're in a difficult situation, such as this police officer here, it is incredibly important that we shift. And these 3 strategies that I want to share with you really build on heart-focused breathing. We want to talk about these for a moment. So, this kind of ties into some of the one of the questions that someone had of Dr. McCready earlier was, how do we sort of change the culture here, right? Well, one of the things that we do need to do is to really make sure all of our folks are aware of this. And I would think that it's an important thing for us all to be on the same page. So before I step into these strategies, one of the biggest things is really the awareness, right? If I go back to this depletion to renewal grid here, one of the biggest pieces of this is our awareness. If we are not aware of where we are on this grid at the moment, and we don't take the time to shift, it's not just going to happen automatically, right? We're at the mercy of our sympathetic nervous system. And you saw the slides that Dr. McCready shared with you, that we're going to remain in a heightened state and our energy is going to be drained. So one of the biggest pieces here is really to have that awareness, not to be judgmental about yourself, because boy, I'm feeling angry and frustrated, but really to just say, yeah, yep, that's where I am right now. Okay, well, where do I want to be? And finding a way to create an active shift. Because I can tell you, as I mentioned, with the sort of takeover that happened at our juvenile institutions and all the phone calls coming in and the frustration, I was matching that. And I quickly got to recognize that me being frustrated at the administration and how could we get here and feeling impatient about lack of resolution wasn't really going to help my colleagues. The best thing for me to do was to take that moment to find some space to shift. And before I got into a new interaction with folks, is to really make sure I was prepared, not just mentally, but emotionally, physiologically, to really hold space for someone and to not step into their emotional field in a negative way. So here are 3 strategies that we can use to build and sustain resilience. So the first thing that we talked about was really understanding those energy drains for ourselves, understanding the impact that these depleting emotions have on our system, and really using that tool of quick coherence in order to sort of bring back a state of physiological coherence even on the fly. These 3 strategies build on that awareness of our depleting emotions, the using quick coherence technique, and really how do we integrate those in our day-to-day. So take a look at the first one, and Dr. McCready shared a little bit about these strategies in his talk this morning. And the first is to prep. And I don't know, and I recognize we're in a space where everybody has their cameras on and all that, but if I was to ask you, who preps for your day, right? Do you have a routine? Do you do some food prep? I see Sharon raising, thumbs up over here, right? And depending on what you do, maybe in the medical field, you have a different type of prep, right? Or if you work, whatever type of work you do, you're going to have some preparation, right? And you're setting the tone for the day, right? But do we always prepare ourselves energetically? Not necessarily, right? We don't necessarily prepare ourselves energetically to go into difficult situations. So one of the things that he mentioned you can do is, whether it's at your shift change, before you go into a meeting, as you know that you're responding to a difficult situation, is to practice quick coherence. You can actually, with prep, not only practice quick coherence, but really imagine yourself in that moment and in that situation. So say I'm responding to the juvenile institution during this takeover, and all of our officers are wearing their gear and preparing for, trying to extract these youth, dealing with negotiations. Before I get to the scene, I can practice quick coherence, and I can imagine myself in that space and remaining calm and composed, whatever comes up. So as I practice and really get myself into a renewing space, I can set the tone for the day, be more composed before I even get there. And I don't know about you, but I this is like anything, it's a practice. I wish I did this more regularly. I have to remind myself, wow, I'm about to set up, go into a difficult situation, and I'm our wellness and peer support coordinator, and I'm trained in HeartMath. So as humans, we're in a human experience, and we just have to build in routines to remind ourselves to set ourselves up for success. And again, one of those ways is by preparing, to thinking about how can I set myself up for success for the day and make sure I have enough resilience and energy to get me through whatever comes ahead. Which brings me to the second point, which is incredibly valuable as well, is that shifting and resetting. So how, when you show up in the morning and you're like, yay, I slept and I'm feeling so energized, and then whoop, you hit a wall. You run into an energy vampire. We all kind of know who those people are, right? It just try to suck the life out of you, right? You end up in a difficult situation, which just by every which way is really trying to just test you. Do you want to stay there? You're triggered, you're angry, you're frustrated. You're like, I'm over this. But you recognize, boy, yes, I remember what Dr. McCready was telling me about my physiology. I remember that I'm becoming the Hulk right now, and I'm thinking maybe I'd like to shift into that space where I have the ability to think clearly, that I remove that cortical inhibition, basically the simple words, I'm allowing myself the ability to think clearly. But if you want to shift and reset, again, we have to have that space of awareness. I recognize I'm being the Hulk. How can I go from being the Hulk or Eeyore, thanks for noticing, don't really care anymore, right? How do I go from this space to becoming a little bit more of a Tigger? Fun. Or if you can't really be a Tigger in that moment, how do you invite some calm and ease? How do you get yourself to a place where you can have a little bit more Yoda Zen moment? And that shift and reset to a coherent state, you have that tool of quick coherence, which you can do on the fly. So just again, having that repertoire of renewing emotions where you can feel, yes, this really helps. And you know what, when you're in the middle, as with, Dr. McCready was sharing that domestic violence incident, you're probably not going to stop in the middle of a structure fire, in the middle of some serious medical emergency or blow up at work. You're not going to stop and, feel some ooey gooey type of emotion. And that's not necessarily going to be the space. It really may be just a moment of calm, right? What is that point, that micro moment that you take for yourself to really just say, I'm going to invite some calm and ease into this space, right? It really could be all that it takes to invite some calm and ease. And that really, it's a commitment, right? To continue to do that, just like going to the gym. You don't do it once and then, whoop, cool, I'm good forever, right? It's one of those things that we get to keep doing, to keep shifting and resetting as we go along. And I recognize that can be, that the idea of that seems exhausting. But the reality is, what is more exhausting to your system and more draining to your system is if you stay in that place where you're feeling those depleted emotions and you don't bring something to reset, because now your energy is drained. And you get to commit to sustaining this throughout your day, through your regular practices. And that may look different for all of you, right? So maybe you could think of ways where you might be able to invite this. So we all have different types of routines or hours that we work. So think about ways that you might integrate some of these strategies into your daily routine. Are you looking at doing this at shift change, before you go to work, afterwards, after lunch, afternoon slump, right? Maybe it's different parts throughout your day, despite how your day is going. But you really it takes a commitment to say, I'm really in this, whatever it takes, that I understand, I've learned, through all of the experience that you have, through what you've learned from Dr. McCready and other presenters of, your physiology is built to do certain things. It's built to rev you up. to help you get through challenging times, but how can you not wear out your motor in the process? Really, how can you not drain your batteries? And a lot of that is through ensuring that you're prepping for those challenging times, that you're finding ways to shift and reset and to sustain that through these various practices. And this is a picture of, I don't know if any of you have been to Moab, but I absolutely love Moab, Utah. And I took a trip here with my sister. We do an annual sister trip. So when I think about something for me that is very renewing, sure, I can think about my sister, right? We have a really positive relationship. She brings me a lot of comfort and joy. But I also think about this trip and the beauty and the awe of that I experienced by being in this majestic place. Perhaps for you, you have your favorite place that you can think of that helps to bring you a sense of calm and ease that makes you feel renewed. But what my request of you is beyond just looking into, hey, what are some of those emotions you can tap into? What are some of those special places that can kind of help bring you a sense of calm and ease in the moment? Pardon me. Is to also ask you is, how will you commit, right? What are you going to do differently? Having learned all this, not just through today's presentations, but through all 4 weeks of this resilience conference, through all the things that you've learned over the course of your career, how will you commit to shifting in your life, right? There are different things that you can do, but just take a moment to reflect on how you might be able to integrate this into your day-to-day. We all, I imagine, would like to invite more calm and ease in our lives. We know that things can be chaotic, your day-to-day. How might you be able to commit? So I'm going to ask you, and maybe you're not a note taker, maybe you're not, that's not something that you do, but if you are feeling inspired to maybe jot down a few things where you can integrate some of these practices into your day-to-day. And maybe for you, it's really asking yourself, where am I on the grid? Where am I on the grid? Am I on that left side in depleting emotions right now, or am I over here and I'm feeling pretty renewed? Are you going to set points in your day where you can check in to ask yourself that question? How do you ingrain that practice for yourself, right? And I would say the important thing is not only can you ask yourself where you are on that grid, that is an important thing, that awareness, but how are you going to shift, right? How are you going to shift if in this really difficult situation, how are you going to find a space to really change what you have going on and really help stop that energy drain so you can feel renewed at the end of the day? And whatever that looks like for you, whether there's a certain time, a trigger, if you know you're in the middle of a challenging situation, is just really understanding that whatever you're doing, whatever you're choosing, it's important because it's for you, that you're doing something to take care of yourself, and that you deserve to go home at the end of the day with energy left for you, for your families, for your loved ones, for all those things that you want to do, so that you don't give it all at work and have nothing left. So again, I hope you found ways to commit to being able to bring your physiology to get control over that, to renew yourself, so that you have more energy left at the end of the day for the things that matter to you. And it was really a pleasure to be able to present some of these HeartMath tools to you. And I know we're about to get into the Q&A portion. I just want to say it really is an honor in this space to talk with folks who are within the first responder communities and those all in this group, whether you identify as a first responder or somebody who also is supporting here, is that these techniques are really for everyone because we're all human. So if you feel inspired to share this with your friends and family, then I encourage you to do so, to look more into what HeartMath has to offer, because this is just a little snippet of the HeartMath solutions. And these are some of the, Dr. McCready gave you a lot of the really foundational science piece of it, and hopefully use that to build upon how you can build those practices on your day-to-day. But if you find yourself being someone who's experienced trauma, there are tools for that. Or if you have family members who have, or maybe even some clients, right? Or perhaps you're just looking to explore more. Okay, this is fantastic. Well, what about that technology? How can I really test out how I'm doing? Not how I think I'm doing, but how I'm really doing. Now that's kind of, some of that's a little bit where the rubber meets the road. But whether you are really interested in exploring that further, or you're just curious enough and willing enough to make a few changes on your day-to-day to check in with yourself, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for all that you do, all that you are, everything that you bring to this world and to your job. And I really do hope that this will serve you not only in your professional life, but in your personal life. And I'm excited to answer any questions that you all may have. And please know that, again, I work in as a first responder, not really first responder as probation. We're a little bit different flavor, but I've been in the law enforcement community for 24 years. And I recognize that bringing these tools to this community can be a little bit challenging. And I've dealt with some of that in sharing these tools with the community. So if you have any questions about that, I'm happy to take those on as well. And let me take my screen share off here. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Jen. It's just so wonderful to really more deeply understand the mind, body, brain connection, and in particular the heart connection and the heart coherence. Learn this very coherence practice. It's phenomenal. We have a number of questions here for you. So the first is, how has the practice helped you in your work? Is there a specific story you can share about the way you felt a shift within yourself from the practice, especially early on, that time before you didn't have the practice and then you discovered with the practice? Tell us about
Wow. That's a great question. I can tell you that I also came into HeartMath as someone who is very excited about this opportunity. So I didn't come into learning about these tools and techniques like kicking and screaming, but I did come in as somebody who is super depleted, who I didn't realize that my heart was calloused from the work that I do. So let me just paint that picture of who I was before. I came in thinking, I'm good, I'm fine, F word, right? I'm fine. And as I learned these techniques, it was that self-awareness, that check-in that I had became bigger for me. I noticed the small things and I will share a personal story because it's most impactful for me. But I recognized I created this distance between myself and my sister. She was my roommate forever. For those people, yeah. And she's the person closest in my life. And I realized as someone close to me, I wasn't letting her in. I wasn't letting her in at all. And as I practiced the techniques that I've learned through HeartMath and found a way to get comfortable really with recognizing my emotions, it's like Dr. McCready said, I blocked myself off from everything. So I didn't want to experience all this anxiety and fear and frustration and the things related to the trauma of work. So I just kind of shut it all down and put on this facade. But once I reconnected with the experience of what emotions are like, I recognized that distance with my sister. I recognized how much like I love her, and how I got to be vulnerable with her. So not only did I get to integrate these in my day-to-day, and recognizing how I get to show up for people in my job. It really brought me very close to my sister. It really opened up my heart. This practice of really getting comfortable with the discomfort of some of these emotions really pushed me into a space where I got to have vulnerability as a superpower, compassion as a superpower, being able to bring in calm and ease into any situation. And boy, let me tell you, not only does that, did that give me a different relationship with people I loved, it also allowed me to serve, because now I connect with my heart. Now, when I'm dealing with these difficult situations on the fly, people not only see me as being human, as somebody who experiences a range of emotions, but who is willing to see them as such as well. So people come into my office, run into my office sometimes because they know that I'm here for them and that I can hold space for them. I'm not going to zap their energy, and that I can teach them a thing or two about how to maybe create some calm for themselves. So I hope that answered your question. I got a little emotional there for a second, because it's really something that's been very impactful for my life.
Well, you're describing something very personal and very powerful. So thank you so much for sharing with us, Jen. And this next question is somewhat along that line, but I think it's just going to help our participants, help us all kind of get deeper into that. You talked towards the end of your presentation about how are you going to commit? Well, in first responder land or culture, there can be barriers to committing that cause barriers within the self to commit to the self. So I'm wondering, what are ways that you could suggest of really removing those barriers or breaking those barriers down so that they're not obstacles to connection?
And that is challenging, especially in these communities. That yes, there are barriers, but when you're talking about committing, a lot of it certainly it starts with you and having your own personal routines, and that can be challenging with the day-to-day. But really getting clear on what are times in your day when these practices will benefit you. What are times as you go along and you deal with difficult situations where you can practice this. And then perhaps you now have your own stories. You don't have to have, tell Jen's story, tell Sharon's story, tell someone else's story. You have your own stories of how this has worked for you. And breaking down some of those barriers, some of the important thing, culture shift is challenging, folks. I mean, I'm not here to say that that's easy. It's really finding people who you can trust, who maybe have some standing in your organization, who people look to as like, especially they're kind of in the law enforcement and the first responder world, they might be an OG, and really sharing some of these techniques with them. If you have someone who is looked up to and people admire and respect, and they think, oh gosh, this person's doing it and you're doing it, I will do it, you can really start a movement. So really creating those shifts is, and I know that practice and what committing is, it's a lot of it, like a lot of things we learn in life, is a buddy system. So if I'm, Lillian, you and I work together, it might just be like, hey, can you let me know when I need to shift? Can you just say shift? You're right. And you can start a culture within your organization, or how do you commit? And maybe it's those before meetings at briefing. You may be up against some discomfort of like, well, what is this weird stuff? Hey, when we're new, folks. When we're, something is going to feel uncomfortable. It's being willing to sit in that discomfort long enough and to just continue with it, because those obstacles are going to be there. One is to really commit to having your own practice, and alone, people will notice. They will start to ask you, what are you doing differently? Right? Just like that officer on the radio. Gosh, what are you doing differently? Normally you're screeching into the radio. And then you have already an audience. So the best thing you can do is to start by your own practice, right? And committing to that. And then again, the buddy system. And if you can find a buddy who is someone that people know and trust, hey, even better.
That's wonderful. Yeah, and so the peer support teams can also be an incredible way to plant those seeds. And just remembering, just planting those seeds will grow, and that's how anything grows. It's small steps in the beginning.
Yes.
Wonderful to be reminded of that. We basically have 2 minutes left, but there's a really great question, Jen.
Hey.
First responders are often taught to be stoic. The idea of being vulnerable with an open heart seems incongruent. So how can I work with this?
How can you work with this? And excuse my language, but in the law, in like our first responder community, we just kind of have to say that that's bullshit, right? It is breaking down those barriers of the stoicness. I think it really comes down to, a lot of it is really being a person who can, once you open your heart, other people are going to be more comfortable in doing so. And finding ways to share experiences together, because then it becomes more normal. The reality is we are kind of in this first responder community, like, hey, suck it up, buttercup type of mentality. It's really finding spaces, perhaps offline, to have those conversations, to have more training opportunities, whether it's at your shift changes, whether it's just a quick training opportunities to really talk about some of these things. And maybe it starts with your unit, right? It starts with the people closest to you, because we're trying to change something that is pretty well embedded for many years. So it really it can start small. And really, we've heard, again, to try to be the change that we want to see in the world. And that sounds maybe easier than it is, but breaking down those barriers by really calling BS and really saying, you know what, everything is not okay. We work in an impoverished environment. Let's be real. So some of it comes with really acknowledging. And if we acknowledge that, and we acknowledge how we feel, and we're given a space to really confront those feelings of frustration, then we can also open up that opportunity to really talk about how we can bring in those feelings of calm and appreciation as well. Because we just really have to open that sort of Pandora's box that, we all have feelings, we're human.
Thank you so much, Jen. We've come to our end. I just wanted to say we're so grateful for these helpful strategies to better manage depleting emotions, the three strategies for building and sustaining resilience. And of course, these quick coherence techniques are absolutely phenomenal. We're grateful for your work, for your dedication, and the work of the HeartMath Institute, and grateful for all of the first responders and people who are benefiting from this work. Thank you so much for all your work and all that you do. We're very grateful that you joined us today.
Thank you all for being here, and I'm wishing you all more calm and ease in your life.
I'd like to post that there are some resources that have been posted in the chat box. There's a couple of more links here that I'm going to post for HeartMath resources. There's also a link to the conference resources. Anything that goes into the chat box will also be available on the conference resources. We are now going to take a very swift 20-minute break, and we ask you during this time to maybe practice some quick coherence and take care of yourself. We ask you also to log off and to log back in. We will be beginning on time at 1 o'clock. So if you could log in just a few minutes before 1 o'clock, that would be super. We look forward at 1 o'clock to welcoming Dr. Rita Nakashima and her team for our second Drills and Skills workshop. All the best. Have a lovely break, everyone. See you back soon.